All right, I want to do a kind of an introduction first of all. My name is Arthur Russell Stevens, and I'm the oldest of the Heber and Jesse Stevens family of Spencer, Idaho. And I grew up around here, born in Humphrey and grew up in Spencer. And we're now at the Humphrey Cemetery in Humphrey, Idaho, and where I have a great deal of my relatives buried in here. My grandfather on my mother's side, grandfather on mother's side, and some of their people, great-grandfather and great-grandmother. And some of my siblings, I have two brothers buried here, younger brothers. Both died as babies, infants.
What are their names, Grandpa?
Darrell Ray is one, Darrell Ray Stevens, and Ira Dewey Stevens. And he was one of a twin in the family, and I'm from a large family, 17 total, with 2 sets of twins. But we want to try and go back and do some remembering and do this video telling about my relatives and places where I grew up and places that were here that are not here anymore. And I have pictures I want to put alongside of these places and compare and kind of do a video thing that I think and hope will turn out to be something that my family can make a DVD and then copy a bunch of them and we'll get them circulated to some of the family that want them and can keep them and pass them down. So the younger generation, like my grandchildren that are doing this video now for me, and great-grandchildren will realize and know where we all came from and began. So that's basically what I want to do here.
All right. Well, should we open up the gate and take a look around in the cemetery maybe for just a few minutes?
That might be good.
All right.
We could do that. And while we're here, he could turn the camera and show up here in the valley. Once was my grandfather, Franklin Otto Robbins. The distant, not the big distant house is one that has been built later. The original part of my grandfather's ranch was where the smaller house sits there, and then you see a dark spot off to the right is part of what's left of the old corral up there. The house that they lived in, the main house, was burned down last year. The people that owned it had no more use for it, and it was more or less just a little cabin that I have pictures of. They burned it down because they had no more use for it and was afraid the children would get hurt. They were running cattle in there at the time, and we went up there and looked around, and was just too late to see the house. But it broke my heart because I wanted to talk about it and get to see in there once. I hadn't been in it or seen in it since I was a really, really small child. Probably maybe 4 years old, because I can remember falling in there over a step, and I wanted to see if that still looked the same inside, but I couldn't get in to see it. So it broke my heart.
But out there in that little valley is where your parents lived.
Yeah.
Very cool.
My grandparents.
Your grandparents.
Yeah. And then my great-grandparents at one time lived in this closer piece of ground with a building and a corral. There was a house there at one time, of course, and they lived in that ranch. And then it was passed on down from there. But
good deal. Well, should we take a look around in the cemetery for a minute?
Let's take around the cemetery for a minute here, and then we'll go on to the next spot. This grave is Robin's, of course. This was my aunt, my mother's sister, Clara Keel.
And there it is, from 1913 to 2002.
Yep.
All right.
And then over next to her was her daughter, Bonnie J. Brown, her daughter.
Okay.
And then her husband, Virgil W. Keel. And he was born
May 27th, or is that July 27th, 1893?
Yeah,
Like that's your birthday.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And died in September 65.
65.
And this is someone I don't know, I don't think.
That's all right.
This was one of these Keel's daughter also.
Okay.
Darlene K. Keel. And
40 to 53, so she didn't live very long, unfortunately.
yeah. Okay, and then let's see. Let's go up here, Scott.
All right.
And we'll come back to these. And keep working our way back. And this is one of the Rose family that used to have a ranch just north of where we're at right now,
Okay.
up the canyon. Alma Rose's oldest daughter, Thelma Rose Stoshich. And she lived up in Lima, Montana.
Okay. She lived quite a while, almost to be 100.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing. And this one is another Rose, Dean L. Rose, and he was her brother, the last one's brother.
Okay. U.S. Army, World War II.
Excuse me. And this was another brother of the Rose family. Brother to him. Next to him there.
Preston Leroy Rose. Alrighty.
And then we go down here. And this I'm not certain about. This was, now I see who. LaRae Rose was a sister to those Roses that we just talked about. A sister and her husband.
Okay.
I didn't recognize the Powers or James Edward, but LaRae Rose I remember.
Okay.
So she was a sister to those other Roses.
Gotcha.
And over here, I don't know who these people were.
Well, that's okay. If you see some ones you don't know, that's fine. We'll just keep moving till you find the ones you know.
I don't know who these people were.
Okay.
Let's hit this one.
Whoops, be careful. Hey, I just fell in a hole over there. So yes, you gotta watch your step.
And this is my grandfather.
Oh, cool.
My grandfather, Franklin Otto Robbins, that owned that ranch we talked about earlier, right across the stream here.
Very cool. (1886 to 1978). He lived a long time too.
Yeah. And this was his wife, his first wife, my grandmother. And I can remember her because she died in '33. I can remember her as a small child. She was a school teacher, and I remember the day she passed away, actually, and I have memory of being here at the cemetery at that time, but I was quite small because I was born in '28, and
Yeah, that would have been just
so I wasn't very old.
5 years after you were born.
Yeah, so, but I remember her.
Very cool.
And then grandfather married another lady later on.
Okay.
Had a family already.
Okay.
And this is part of the family. It's a Wakefield, and Wakefields were related to the Robbinses because my grandmother, right there, Ada, was a Wakefield. Her maiden name was Wakefield. So this Wakefield was part of her relatives,
Okay.
and I don't know where it came in.
Okay. Good to know.
Over here, these are my two brothers that we talked about early at the beginning.
Right.
Ira D. Ira Dewey. Was one of the twins. He was a twin to my sister Iris Dolly Stevens. And she is deceased also, but she's in Spencer Cemetery.
Okay.
And this was Del Ray Stevens, my other brother that we mentioned.
You can see he only lived about a month and a half.
Yeah. Both of them were pretty young when they passed away. It was in the dead of winter, and they both died of pneumonia.
Do you remember them very well?
I remember the day, yeah.
Yeah.
Both of them. It was sad. They'd done everything right at the house there in Spencer, and it was a sad time, very sad.
Okay.
Look, what's this?
Hi.
Say hi.
Hi,
Can you say grandma
Grandma.
and
Grandma.
Grandma.
and Tracy? Tracy.
Grandma. Grandma.
Uh-huh.
Mama, this is you.
At least he's cute though, right, honey?
Yeah, that's true. It gets him out of a lot.
True story. Alrighty. What's up?
I don't want to be you filmed. I just wanted to show you that wall.
Oh, cool. Oh yeah, you
I
said.
said that there was a wall, storefront and stuff.
Right.
Where what those left is like for the garage.
So that down where.
Uncle Weldon's garage is what's left of that wall.
Yeah, see, the garage was at the end, and then this wall went all the way to the street corner.
Oh wow.
Businesses and
So that
stuff.
rock wall where. Oh, neat.
Yeah.
And all that's left is the front of the garage now. This used to be all storefronts all along there in downtown Spencer.
To the corner where Weldon and Rita's house is.
Wow.
All the way across.
And then this picture is taken from about here, showing that exact building right there.
Wow. Huh. Oh yeah, it sure is. Hey, Grandpa.
Yeah.
Do you have a picture where the store was? Trying to find out.
I couldn't find the store, picture of it. I guess I didn't bring it, but it used to sit right here.
Old Humphrey store did.
The background of the ranch was in the picture,
Okay.
as I recall. And the store sit right in here. The actual general store. Gas pumps in front and big Texaco sign. And down here where that gate is, there's a railroad track, the Union Pacific Railroad track going north to Butte. And just north of that gate and road going there was the old, right along let's see, this picture was probably taken, looks like according to the mountain about right in there. So the water tank, I think, set right up, see that peak? It looks like snow on the peak. I think that's that peak right there. And the water tank set right down there.
Right back in there.
Right back about where that third pole is, telephone pole is, right next to the track. This picture of the water tank was there. And you can tell by the background of the mountains behind it.
Yeah, you sure can.
Because the mountain over there is still the same.
Right, yeah, those mountains don't change. Cool.
And then let's see. Over here was my aunt and uncle Pat's ranch. And we took a tour of that ranch some years ago before my cousin died. And he and his sister grew up there. And were little kids. And we went back and went through all that. And he died right after that.
Well, it's good lucky that you got in there to see it, right?
And it brought back a lot of memories for them, and I got a lot of still pictures of it, inside and out. And then south of that ranch, from about, that road or possibly a little farther south, there was a little stream of water that came down through that valley. Evidently something off of Beaver Creek, which is over there where the willows are. And maybe some springs or something, but water came down and they flooded that area over there. And in the wintertime they put up ice for the railroad. And you can still see the two head gates. See those two dark spots over there on the dam? There's a dam there. And those are the head gates for the water of the dam. And they flood that and put up ice for the railroad company there.
Okay.
And I have a picture of the winter time, the teams of horses that were on that ice pond. That were on that ice pond working in the winter time. And that's how they put up the ice. They cut it all by hand And this evidently picture was these teams of horses scraping off the snow off the ice pond.
Wow.
And then they preparing to cut. And they cut blocks of ice, and there was a railroad spur that went over there. And they loaded it up in box cars, big blocks, and stored it in more ice houses. And there was an ice house in Spencer at one time that was full of ice from this ice pond
Really?
all summer long. It was
Wow.
nice and cool in there all the time.
Oh, I
we
bet.
played in there as kids
Oh, cool.
in the sawdust and ice.
Right.
Probably we can start and go south a little more. Because down on this other corner, where that road goes down, right here through the gate and down on the south side of that, right on that corner, there was another big building there one time. Owned by some of the Pat family, distant grandfathers or great grandfathers. Had a store there at one time, and they later turned it over to my grandparents, Charles I and Pearl Lucy or Lucy Pearl, whichever.
Which is a Hinkley.
Yeah, she was a Hinkley. I'd like to tell a little bit about the Humphrey Depot, railroad depot that was once here. And like I said before, the track was right down in this area, just below this little hill here. Where that, you see that gate? That's where a railroad goes along there. And right along that railroad there was a depot. A pretty good sized depot, and it was pretty nice. I remember being inside of it several times, and then there was a side track alongside of it down farther, and a spur that turned off and went around to the ice pond.
And that ice pond was out in here too, right?
Yeah, that ice pond was over in there where those two head gates are,
Okay.
and that meadow.
Right.
Filled up with ice and water, freezing in the winter. But anyway, this depot, I remember being in that depot, and my uncle and I, my dad's youngest brother, lived right down here. We'll talk about that a little bit. He and I would come up here and go down there, and the train didn't ordinarily stop at that depot much unless it had business, and they had mail to get on the train usually, and it would slow down, and on the baggage car on this side it had a arm on the baggage car, and there was a post alongside the track that they hung the mail sack of mail on that post next to the track, and as the train went by, that arm would swing out. I guess a baggage man or something would swing that arm out at just the exact right time and catch that bag and bring it into the car of the train. That's how they picked up the mail usually.
Wow.
Sometimes they had to stop and pick up cans of milk and cream and stuff like that, because they shipped a lot of that from the ranches at that time. But I thought that was pretty interesting, and we used to watch them do that.
Definitely.
I just wanted to touch a little bit on this. There was once a small house that Dad built here, right in this area across that fence on that low flat spot. And it wasn't much of a house, more of a shack, you might say. But I remember there were only, Rose and I were the only two children he had at that time. And so we were both pretty small. But, and the toilet, the outside toilet was farther down, like down below the sagebrush line.
Okay.
There in the kind of the meadow, and they went somewhere one time and left us with somebody, I can't remember who. Anyway, Rose and I somehow build a fire, playing with matches, build a fire in the toilet and set the toilet on fire. That we got scolded really bad for setting that toilet on fire, I'll tell you. Dad was not happy about that.
Grandpa wasn't too pleased about that, huh?
No, not at all. Okay,
Good deal.
that takes care of this part. Now we'll go down a little farther to where my birthplace was and where Grandfather Stevens' ranch was around the bend right down here.
Alrighty.
This spot right here, looking down from where we're standing, was once the Union Pacific Railroad bunkhouse where I was born in 1928. There was a bunkhouse there, and a little ways farther to the south there was two other houses. One was a larger houses that stood up, were built up higher, that you entered kind of at the ground, this ground level here. One was the section foreman's house, and the other was a signal maintainer's house. And we lived in the bunkhouse, of course. And there used to be a road that started right up here a little ways and came slanted down right here where this grass is, and went along here and came up down there a little ways, hooked onto the road. Kind of a little access off the road area. You could pull in and have a picture of the bunkhouse somewhere showing the bunkhouse and Model T Ford that Dad had at that time, sitting it right here on this little road.
That's
I think
cool.
It was about a 25 model, 1925.
How big was the bunkhouse?
Well, I can't recall how many rooms or anything, but it wasn't very large. I'd say no more than maybe 3 rooms. And it's sit right here next to the track.
So right by the railroad track, huh?
Yeah, right in there between the road bed here and the railroad track.
Do you have a lot of memories of that, living there, or not many?
I don't.
You just know that's where...
That's where I was born, and I can't remember much about it other than the 2 houses that were next to it down there. So,
Pretty country to be born in, though,
yeah,
I'll say.
yeah.
Good deal.
Okay, we're ready?
We're ready.
So don't say crap.
Yeah, don't say crap, Tracy.
All right, now we're standing here in Humphrey, Idaho, looking at my grandfather, Charles Isaac Stevens, and Pearl Lucy Hinckley Stevens. Their old ranch. What's left of it, and the house used to be right up there on the hill. It's gone now, all parts of the house. There were several outbuildings, like a pig pen, a large one, and a granary, and a couple other buildings, storage buildings for mowing machine and rake and things he had to use. He was old, I can remember, coming up here in the summer and staying and sleeping in that cabin with my uncle George, Dad's youngest brother. And, then George's and Dad's older brother built this other house out of ties, and he and his family lived there after they passed away. And George had gone to Washington to raise his family, and everybody else went their separate ways. And he built that in this garage. Ties from the railroad.
Wow.
And this garage is built out of bridge ties. They're lots wider and thicker and longer than the old regular railroad ties. And man, it took a lot of work, I'm telling you, to put those things up on each other and, by hand. A lot of snow here. It seemed like it would drift right up and almost cover most of the buildings. You couldn't hardly see, only the tops of them. And you couldn't hardly see anything except maybe part of that mountainside right there on that peak. Used to be a lot of rock chucks in there, and George and I used to sit out there on the porch and shoot the chuck rocks with a 22.
Oh yeah.
So it was quite an interesting place, and Grandpa used to put up hay, cut and mow and rake, and all along the right-of-ways of the railroad, and then he'd haul it in with the wagon. And I used to help him do that and put it in the barn up in the loft to feed his animals. Grandmother made her own butter and churned it all by hand, and was always baking bread. Really hard work, very hard work.
Sounds like you have a lot of memories from here.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time right here with George. Yeah.
That's neat.
I actually remember the day he turned 16 years old. I was up here with him, and we were standing right outside in front of the house, and one of Grandpa's old Model Ts, he had two of them. One he stored in one of the sheds, and standing out by that, and it was George's birthday, 16th birthday, and I remember well because he says, "Boy, I'm 16 years old now. I'm just about a man." And I was only 12, and I can remember that really, really good.
Huh.
So he was flexing his muscles and, showing off.
Right. That's funny.
He later went into the service in World War II, and we just found out recently that he was an actual hero.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I've got a story about him that someone told on board the ship that picked him up out of the ocean. His ship was torpedoed and went down in World War II, and he helped save about 23 people, and took no credit for doing it. And this man that was on the ship, I think it was a Talbot, told a story about George. And I have it all written down that I'm going to record and pass it down in the family, because it's really interesting. And I think it should be recorded and known to all of our family. We never talked about it, but he was on the Indianapolis, a battleship,
Oh yeah.
on their way to the Philippines, and a German torpedo boat blew him out of the water. And it's quite an interesting story.
Did you guys find some pictures of?
Look at this.
Oh, cool.
Check this out. You tell me that's not that mountain right
That's
there.
a winter picture.
Down here. This one down.
This right here.
Winter picture right there.
It's hard to
Do I
get
need to move
focused
it?
on.
You need the
Light or
Oh, maybe.
screen taken, the film taken off of it.
Oh, there you go. Just darken it up a little bit. There you go.
don't let the wind blow away.
I just wanted to get this glare off of it for you.
No, it's just
Still not gonna have the glare off really, but. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That sure is that mountain right there. Huh.
It definitely is.
Wow.
And the house that you said was there is missing, but
It's missing, but that was the house.
Wow.
Well, then what's that building that's there
Well,
now?
that's something that was added later. That
So that's
part.
not anything that's left of what was the
no,
house?
No, that's something at Dutch's time when he built these buildings here.
That's sure as crap. Is that
That's
that
that
hill
mountain,
right there?
definitely, yes.
Looking through there, I
Yeah.
see that mountain.
Yeah, there's no
Crap, you just
question
said
about
with
that
snow,
at all.
wind.
Bridges on the railroad.
Oh wow, yeah, they're
That would take 4 or 5 men to look
Oh,
for those
yeah.
things. Holy
A
crap.
lot of work putting them up there.
huh. Yeah,
They're
they're
thick. They're like a railroad tie, only they're this wide.
he said they're made for bridges.
Yeah.
And these side ones? Yeah, look at them. Yeah, they're the width of a railroad
Yeah, those are
tie, only
a lot bigger than railroad ties. I bet.
Back then. Okay, this is Art Stevens again. My grandson Scott Stevens is on the camera, and my grandson,
That's not a grandson.
my son Ron, excuse me, and my son Tracy in the background here.
What's up, guys?
Hey, yo.
And we're going to continue on with this thing we started. Right now, we're at a spot here where at one time they had a place where they made a grounds affair for a rodeo, and they held rodeos here. I'm thinking back to maybe 2 to 3 years, maybe another year longer, I don't know. They had a rodeo there every year, and
Right out in this open
And
spot here.
this open spot here, this field, up closer to the foot of the mountain right there, the other side of where the trees are now, they weren't there then, but there's a little creek that runs through there, and the other side of that creek, right at the base of that mountain, they built a corral for the stock and a couple of chutes for the horses and the steers and cows or bulls or whatever they were to come out of the chutes and guys ride them, you know. And then the pavilion thing was down a little farther down this way to the south of that, where people set up all their wares and sold things and had food and all kinds of trinkets and stuff, and the benches they made for the audience to watch the show, they dug along the bottom of the mountainside and laid down planks to sit on, and like a kind of a stair step type thing for everybody to be seated and watch the show, and then they could mill around afterwards on all the recreational part of it. And they held that for I think at least about 3 years. And one year they actually had a airplane come in, a double wing, I guess they call it a biplane, with two passenger thing, a pilot and room for 2 people to sit in there besides, and landed it right down here on top of this flat hill that goes up. There's a road now there you can see that goes up over the edge of that hill. Well, that flat part right there was all flat down for quite a ways, nothing but sagebrush. And they cleared some of that sagebrush off and made it so they could land and take off with a small plane and circle around the valley and take beautiful rides. And I remember my mother's sister, my aunt Mary Poole, she loved excitement like that, and her and her friend, one of the Rose girls from Humphrey, Thelma Rose at the time. Those two got in that plane and took a ride, and then a little later my Aunt Mary took another ride because she liked it so well. And I thought that was pretty exciting because I was real small at the time. And then to see them take off and land there on top of that hill and circle around the valley. So it was kind of neat.
Good deal.
And that kind of covers that part. So
Pretty country out in here.
anyway, that's where it was, and not a lot of people know this because they only had it for, like I say, around 3 years, and then it was done away with.
Right.
So
Good deal. Well, should we move on to the next spot?
yeah, let's go to the next place over here, probably in the old Beaver area.
All right. So apparently Grandpa knew about a little cemetery up here that nobody else knew about. This is the Beaver Canyon Cemetery. So Grandpa and my dad and Uncle Tracy are all taking a look around in here. The gate was open, and you can see this obviously hasn't been kept up in a while. It's pretty overgrown, but we're gonna go follow them and take a look around and see what we find in here.
Buried up here, just forgotten up here.
Some old headstones.
Yeah, this one. This bush is in the grave.
Oh, really? Just
Headstone right behind it here.
huh?
There's a little teeny one right there. Initials J and D.
That's all it is initials.
That's it.
I'm not sure what that
Buried up here.
headstone says, but
His family, do they even know he's here? Do they even care that he's buried here?
it's pretty crazy, isn't it?
This one has no writing on it at all. That's just a hand.
There's not even any marking on it?
Yeah, this whole bush right here is covering up some headstones we found out that nobody probably even knows exist. A completely unmarked headstone right there with nothing on it.
Okay, Art Stevens again. We're at the next point of interest, and from this point here, leaving out all the vegetation, pretty much. Right down below here, you can see there's a railroad, Union Pacific Railroad there. It goes into the mouth of the canyon. Well, at one time there was a whole town called Beaver, Idaho. Old Beaver, we call it. And it was right down in a kind of a circle, with the town being on both sides of the track and the track going through the middle of it. And the track hasn't moved, and the mountains haven't moved, and somewhere in my collection I have a picture of somebody sitting on one of these rocks right here. You probably can't see it now for the vegetation, but he took a picture from that rock. He was sitting on that rock, took a picture of the town down below, with the train and the section house and water tank and the whole business, and I understand they had more bars than they did anything else at that time. So it was very popular for that. But there is a picture, several pictures, as a matter of fact, from way back. They don't show really good, but you can tell. And you can see there's one of the winter scene showing a train coming up the track, and you can distinguish the train and the smoke and steam coming out of the train. But it was in the winter time and everything was covered with snow. But that is where the town of Beaver was there.
Right here in this little
Right there in
clearing,
that-
huh?
Right there in that kind of a circle with the track in the middle.
I think Tracy's got that picture you were talking about right
I
here.
think he
So
has.
let's
So
see if we
try
can
and
zoom in on that.
and if you notice the mountains from the picture, they resemble the one on the video, because that's where it was taken.
Yeah, you can't see the mountains very well in the picture, but
It's
you
gonna
can-
be hard, yeah.
it's pretty similar. That
right
one
there.
peak right up there
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, there's
The
quite a
one-
bit more vegetation growing up on that mountain than there was back then.
Yeah, but that one peak right up there, right,
But that's
right in the middle.
our biggest, tallest peak in the middle. Has a name and it distinguishes where it was.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so the other canyon going up this way goes up to what we call Dairy Creek, and there used to be years ago a big dairy farm up in there where they raised dairy cattle and stuff, and had lots of, that going on, shipping cream and milk and stuff. But if you go up over that, you go over Porcupine Pass, it's called, and you can go over that and turn and go right into Kilgore and make a loop from Kilgore and come back into Spencer on a dirt road into Spencer. But it makes a big loop and goes into Kilgore.
Around those mountains.
Yeah, around those mountains. And at one time there was a man-made dam up there too called Fraser Dam. There's nothing left up there except where the dam itself once was. And it's still there and you can tell it. But you have to know where it's at.
Right.
And I'm one that knows where it's at.
That's pretty cool.
In that area where that one car you can see on the freeway maybe, just to the right of that, that was once where the sawmill, Spencer Lumber Company it was called, was at. And they got the wooden trees from the mountainside behind it, up there where all the pine trees are, and either drug them or hauled them down there to the edge of the mountain and then slid them down over the mountain to the mill and ran them through the mill and cut rough lumber out of them. And I worked there one whole summer until fall, and I wrote a story about it, what I could remember. It's more interesting than this that I'm telling you. But I wanted to touch on this now and kind of go over it a little bit so it would be part of this video. The freeway has taken up some of the area where the lumber yard itself was, and I myself, when I worked there, drove a small Caterpillar and pulled slips of kind of things made out of wood from the mill that was cut with kind of runners on it, like a sled, and loaded the lumber onto that, stacked it onto that, and then pulled it with the cat out into the yard and put it in piles, stacked it, and then it sold from there. It was a pretty good-sized working mill. At that time, it had several houses of people that lived right there. Small places.
Good.
Okay.